With us, the superintendent for the Walled Lake Consolidated School District, Kenneth Gutman. Always great having you with us.
Always great to be here. Thank you, Ronnie. Good to see you, Tyler, as well. And yes, I would very much like to return to somewhat of some normalcy at some point. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a few years before we get back to where we were last year. However, the school doors are starting to reopen. How are things looking in your school district right now?
They've been really good. We've been open. Our elementaries have been open since November, and our secondary schools reopened not too long ago. We're going to allow for more students to return in the near future as well. So everyone will at least have the opportunity to return if they would like to, while still offering virtual options. It looks different. We have some barriers in place. People, of course, are wearing masks. We observe social distancing where we can. And it's not the same kind of school year, but it feels really good to be in schools and have students and staff there. And ideally, it's a lot better next year.
So with that, we know that the CDC did recently change some of the guidelines for schools. They are allowing for 3 feet of social distancing rather than 6 feet. But even that still has to be a challenge because the buildings weren't built to be socially distant.
No, most buildings in this country over the years have been built for assembly line education with students in rows. And of course, we've adapted over the years with better seating arrangements and that sort of thing. But no, we were already doing 3 feet or under. And so the CDC caught up to what we've been doing. They did some studies in, I think, 4 different areas in different states and found that 3 feet would be acceptable, which is really good because that's all we could accommodate. And that's all most people can accommodate in most schools across the country that, as you said, weren't built for this.
So with that, though, we do know that, was it Keith Elementary that had to close down and go back remote? Does that still keep you awake at night, worrying about these outbreaks?
Yeah, Ronnie, it's one of the things that keeps me awake at night. We watch the numbers like we would watch the stock market. Every day I get a list of students and staff quarantined or positive, and we make the determination as to whether or not we'll be able to keep buildings open. And in Keith's case, we went from a very low percentage to 23% overnight. And it wasn't positive cases as much as it was quarantines. And so people who were exposed to people. And so it was unfortunate we had to close Keith for a short period of time until after spring break. But I always will err on the side of caution. We've set a district limit of 10% staff or students quarantine. And it's a very conservative estimate, a very conservative number. But again, we want to protect everyone. And we immediately switched to virtual learning. So learning continues to happen.
Well, and by now, a year into this, people are used to it. So, that adaptation isn't taking as long as it once did. I would imagine it's pretty much take your computer home with you every single day.
Right. Well, exactly. A year ago, when we pivoted over the course of a weekend, I think it was March 13th, the 16th, or just after the 16th, somewhere in there, we pivoted to online learning. We've come a long way since then. And so now it's more, I wouldn't say seamless, but the transition is much easier.
Kenneth Gutman with us here on the MegaCast. He's the superintendent for the Walled Lake Consolidated School District. The good news, more and more people are becoming vaccinated. How is that going within your school district right now?
It's going really well. We believe we have over 50% vaccinated. We polled our staff and got a pretty decent response rate. We've held 4 vaccination clinics ourselves, or that have been held for our staff. We had some events with Huron Valley Sinai, and then we also had a 150-person clinic here at our administrative building. And so we think we're well on the way to having more and more of our staff vaccinated each and every day. I know in Oakland County, they've been able to get a lot of people through, and that everyone who's been on the list has been able to, everyone who wants to be on the list, who's eligible, has been able to get on the list from an educational standpoint.
Yeah, that is the good thing. It seems like the supply is starting to catch up with the demand. But until the students are able to get vaccinated, it's still going to be tricky.
It is, although we are finding that most of the transmission isn't happening in schools. And so that's the good news, that if our staff are vaccinated, it's a start. And yeah, certainly the more people who get vaccinated, who want to be vaccinated, who are able to be vaccinated, the better. I'm not an epidemiologist, but it seems to me that the more people who are vaccinated, the better off we'll be.
Right. And with that, how does that work and how's that conversation going? Because students 16 and or under 16, so 15 and under, cannot be vaccinated as of yet until more studies are done. So if teachers have been vaccinated, but a student tests positive, does the teacher still have to go out and quarantine? How does that conversation work?
So it really depends. We follow CDC guidance, which means that the teacher would have had to have been within 6 feet or whatever proximity it would be, 6 feet for more than 15 minutes over the course of a 24-hour period. That doesn't always happen. And so it wouldn't necessarily be the case.
It is so confusing, even still. I mean, and as we're a year into it and you're getting more used to it and you're able to adapt easier, there are still these curveballs that keep coming our way.
Yeah, every time we learn the rules, they change. It's been that way for about a year now.
Right. With that, though, the teachers have to feel good about getting back into the classrooms.
I would say the majority do. I think that there's still people who are frightened, as with a lot of people in society. They have concern. They may be caring for aging parents. They may have their own health issues. And so, but by and large, the teachers I've spoken to in schools have been really happy to be there. It feels right. It feels normal to be there with students. And we're going to open in the fall. We're going to open in person, but we're still going to offer a virtual option. So we may have some teachers who want to teach virtually in the fall. And we may have some parents who say, you know what, we're not over this, and we want to keep our kids home. And so we're working on a virtual option as well. But I think when we return the majority of our students in the fall, when we don't have to continually do teacher and staff changes over the course of a year, as we've done, I think 5 times this year, life will get much better for everyone.
So how does that work when the teachers are teaching in classroom and virtual as well? Are the students pretty much attending that class virtually, and then they're zooming in on a computer screen or a monitor for the teacher to be able to see them, but they're also teaching to the classroom?
They are, and I think it's complicated, and I commend our staff for undertaking this. It's not easy, but they are essentially teaching 2 groups of students at the same time at the secondary level. So they're teaching students who are on their monitor at the same time as they're teaching students who are in front of them. And the challenge intensifies when you have more students in person than you have online, because you don't have classroom management issues to the same extent with everyone online or with more people online. But as you have more people in person, you have to pay special attention to those online so they don't get lost. And it's tricky, it's challenging, and it's not a model we'd like to advocate, or for which we'd like to advocate in the future.
Right. I'm sitting here trying to think of, if I'm a teacher, how is this working? Like, oh wait, I haven't paid attention to them for a while. Let me zoom back, turn around and address the Zoom class.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's challenging. And again, my hat's off to our teachers who are just doing an incredible job making that work.
So with that, I know some schools have put basically little plastic barriers around each student. Is that how it's working and looking in your school district right now?
Well, it depends which classroom. We're not micromanaging that. It depends on the comfort zone within each classroom, and it depends on the circumstance and what the activity is. But it certainly does exist in cases where students are eating without masks, and it does exist in cases where the teacher is more comfortable having that kind of setup.
So right now, high school sports, are you guys playing sports?
We are. Sports are going on, and we're trying to interpret the latest order from MDHHS regarding testing of athletes. I spoke to our athletic director this morning, and it's complicated, but we do have athletics happening right now.
Because with that, what is the test? And I couldn't imagine, is it every day? Because if it's the nasal swab test that these poor kids have to do every day, ouch.
Yeah, ouch is right. I've done one of those. I don't know if you've had that experience, but certainly I wouldn't want that daily. I don't have all the details on that. I know our athletic director's on top of it.
Yeah, I was talking to someone and they travel a lot for work. So every time before they get on the plane, they have to do the test. And when you're traveling as much as they're traveling and doing international, he's like, my nose just can't take it anymore.
Yeah, it's slightly uncomfortable to say the least.
Right? Going through it once was enough. I don't want to do it every day and every other day. We're talking with Ken Gutman. He's the superintendent for the Walled Lake Consolidated School District. Can we dip into the world of finance for just a second?
Let's go there.
How's the budget going?
We're actually at a point where we're feeling okay about it. We'll never feel good about it in public schools until we can have a weighted funding formula. And we're a long way from getting there. We can go all the way back to the early 90s when we changed our state funding formula to one that was predicated on property values increasing. And so I won't go all the way back there and bring us forward, except to say that our state budget will never be what schools need under the current formula. But I will say we're in a better place right now, that some of the stimulus money is helping. And then Senate Bill, actually PA 3 now just recently passed, which does provide money for school districts who offer the opportunity for all students to return to 5-day-a-week instruction in person for at least 20 hours. We will qualify for that, we believe, as we've offered it to our parents. We'll get the majority of our students back who want to be back over the next short period of time. And that, for our district, is a $1.8 million swing. So there are some opportunities with some federal relief money and some state money. It's not where we'd like it to be, but it's a lot better than it's been.
Well, and with that, Superintendent, what are your thoughts about having some of this money connected to these rules and regulations about getting kids back into the classrooms? Because, some school districts maybe aren't set up the same way.
Yeah, if we didn't feel we could do it safely, we wouldn't comply with that and we'd lose out on the money. And I think it's an individual district decision. I respect the work that school boards have had to undertake this year as well, because they've been placed in a place that's unheard of for school boards. They've been placed in a quasi-administrative role at times. They've had to continue to interpret these types of things and make decisions based on, ideally, what's best for children. And so if you feel like you can't follow that safely, you don't have to bring everyone back, but you will forego some funding. Do I think it should be tied to that? I do not. But we're going to do it safely and not forego the funding. And it's a difficult place to be.
Yeah, I'm sure some of these school board members are like, "What did I sign up for?" When they were, it's an elected position, and
it's an elected volunteer position, Ronnie. They don't get paid for this. They're making decisions on behalf of everyone's child, and they do it out of the goodness of their heart, not for some great political gain. So they run for office to be a volunteer.
Yeah.
And this year's been exceedingly difficult for all board members.
Well, I hope one thing that comes out of this, people really start to pay attention when they go to the polls and they see these positions on that ballot, because so many people just mark and they don't do the homework. And so it is really important to start paying attention to these very, very local level positions. And with that, one thing I saw on the list that I absolutely love what you guys are doing there at your school district is you're bringing in therapy dogs. Why is that needed? But I love it.
Well, I could tell you personally why it's needed. I had a visit from Champ, who's our therapy dog at Mary Helen Guest Elementary this morning, and I was in a meeting with Champ for about a half an hour, and I will tell you, I felt better all day. So firsthand testimony, I got my therapy from one of our therapy dogs this morning. We currently have one at Western Dakota. Western High School. Dakota is our therapy dog there, and Champ is at Mary Helen Guest. We're going to bring 3 on in the next year or so, and we're looking to bring 3 more on following that. There's research behind it, but I can tell you anecdotally that seeing those dogs in the building is just it changes the demeanor, it changes the mood of staff and students. I can think back to when we first brought Champ to Mary Helen Guest. And the principal sent me a picture of a student who was smiling and said, "This is the first time in the last several years this student has ever smiled." Wow. And it was just a few minutes just hanging out with Champ. Students read to Champ. Students spend time with Champ. It makes a huge difference, and it makes a big difference at Western with Dakota. And I look forward to that with our other therapy dogs. Eventually, we'd love to have one in every school, but we'll only do it in a way that's safe, in a way that people are comfortable. We were working on our handbook, our therapy dog handbook this morning, and Champ provided great input.
But, what about kids that are maybe allergic to pets?
Yeah, we're going to be sensitive to that. If we have students who are allergic to pets, we'll either have a plan to accommodate that or we won't bring a pet into a building.
So, and we know more and more entities are starting to use therapy dogs, not just at the hospitals. We're seeing it at the courtrooms as well. They're starting to bring in the dogs. And like you said, so many libraries have had some of these dogs come in because kids are more comfortable reading and petting a dog at the same time. Who owns these dogs? Is it a staff member?
So the district actually owns each of the dogs. They are our dogs. At the end of 10 years of service, we do allow that staff member to purchase the dog for $1. We're only a couple of years into the program, so we have a ways to go. But the dogs are actually district owned. They do stay at the home of a staff member who's in the building, in the particular school. And we do have some people who oversee the program as well.
It is really a great program. I love that you guys are doing it and you're expanding it as well. And I would anticipate you're going to start seeing more and more school districts do this, especially coming out of COVID, because there are so many emotional issues that are going to need to be addressed over the next coming years.
I would agree. I think the biggest difficulty we've experienced, other than people who've become ill, is the social emotional aspect, both for staff and students of the past year. And I would agree the degree to which therapy dogs can help heal some of that, is the degree to which we'll be better as a school district.
With us right now on the show is Ken Gutman. He is the superintendent for Walled Lake Consolidated School District. And with that, superintendent, anything maybe I didn't ask that you want to touch on today?
Yeah, let me touch on, thank you, Roddy, for that opportunity. I really want to touch on really quickly some great bond projects we have. As you know, a couple of years ago, our community passed a $316 million bond issue, one of the largest in the state, and we are well underway with construction. Our early childhood center is coming up in the area of 13 Mile Road, just off of Meadowbrook, and it is going to be a beautiful facility for our youngest learners. Dublin Elementary groundbreaking is coming up. We're going to rebuild Dublin Elementary in White Lake. It's going to come down on the same site. We're going to build it on the same site as the building that will come down. Walled Lake Western High School is getting a $90 million rebuild. It'll be equitable with Central and Northern. And then we're also this summer working on Guest Elementary, Smart Middle School, Sarah Banks Middle School, Walnut Creek Middle School. And we'll be meeting with our staff soon to have some of the discussions about what will happen this summer for construction work. So construction's well underway and we're building the future.
That's great. That's, bond money at work right there. You're listening to 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. Superintendent, we always appreciate your time.
It's always a pleasure talking to you anytime.